Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you, Pat. Good afternoon.
We're live now.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. We will go ahead and call the February Cobb County Board of Elections and Registrations meeting to order at 3:01 p.m. I'm Tori Silas, the chair of the board. Hopefully everyone has had an opportunity to take a look at the agenda. Again, we will follow the agenda as presented. To start the meeting, we will start with public comment. And based upon the list that has been provided, Shelley Northrup, is there a Shelley Northrup with us this afternoon?
Yes. Shelley, you've been unmuted now.
Hi. Hi, my name is Shelley Northrup and I live and work in Smyrna. I want to urge the board to make sure that all voters can cast their ballots in a timely and fair manner. As someone who has previously had to wait in line for several hours to vote at a Cobb County election location, we need to expand to 20 early voting locations that are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day, and there must be Sunday voting. The Board of Elections should also consider having large voting locations to meet high voter turnout. The board should also address any bureaucratic red tape that may impact hiring an adequate number of poll workers for the county. Cobb County should be innovative and be committed to expanding voter access to have fair elections for all voters. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Northrup. We appreciate your comments and your participation this afternoon. Ms. Kristen Santos, and just as a reminder, not to suggest Ms. Northrup even came close to the 5 minutes, but just as a reminder, each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. And next on our list again is a Ms. Kristen Santos. Is Ms. Santos with us this afternoon?
No, she's not here.
Okay. Next up, a Ms. Jenny Rathman.
Yes, she's here. You've been unmuted.
Hi.
You'd like to make a comment?
Hi, thank you. Grab my notes. I'm Jenny Rathman. I live in East Cobb and Precinct SO03. I'm an attorney and I volunteered as a deputy registrar and as a poll watcher. And I'm here today because I just want to make sure our board is expanding access to voters. I know firsthand how time consuming it can be to work at the polls, especially during early voting when you're often working multiple days in a row. And I'm just hoping that the board will prioritize allocating funds so that Cobb can hire enough and qualified people and maybe even have the ability to schedule poll workers to work every other day instead of having to do it so many days in a row. But as challenging as it can be, I know that to me, the answer isn't to limit hours of operation or days on which people can vote. I mean, life is hard and people's lives are stressful. And I just think we owe it to our community to make voting as simple and as convenient as possible. So for me, I feel strongly that we need early voting on Sundays. I think our polling locations across the board should be open from 7 to 7. And I also think we should start using larger venues like the Cobb Galleria or Truist Park to give people adequate parking and transportation access. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Rathman, and for joining us this afternoon. Next up on the list is Mr. Stephen Gray. Is Mr. Gray with us this afternoon?
No, I don't immediately see him, but let me double check.
Sure, thank you.
Nope, he is not here.
Okay. Next on the list is a Miss Pamela Riordan.
Yes, she's here. You've been unmuted. You'd like to make your comments?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, and just as a reminder, each speaker is limited to 5 minutes during the public comment section. But yes, go ahead, Ms. Riordan.
Okay. So my name is Pamela Riordan, and basically what I'm going to talk about today is drop boxes. I'm just reminding everybody that the drop boxes are at advanced polling stations only inside, and they're locked at night, and there has to be chain of custody forms for the opening and the closing, and that the ballots are transported to the central location in the evening, and that the election, either a security person or the election worker has to keep their eye on the drop box at all times. And I just hope that they've been taught and trained that only one person can put one ballot in the box, no multiple ballots, unless you have an affidavit and there's a caretaker involved or a family member who cannot come and put their own ballot in. And I just want to implore you not to put them in libraries. That's a disaster waiting to happen. And there are only one drop box per 100,000 voters. I actually don't know if it's 100,000 voters or actually people who live in the county. But I know that Miss Janine will have that and be on top of that. So that's my comments today, except that I don't think that we need a huge place to have elections. We cover it very well in Cobb County, and the staff is very efficient. So thank you very much. Oh, and I'm calling in from Cancun. So that's how dedicated I am. So have a great day, you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Riordan. I definitely believe that you get the award from calling in from the farthest, far-flung location. Thank you for your participation as always. Just wanting to circle back to the extent that Ms. Kristen Santos joined us. Did Ms. Santos join us?
No.
Okay. Just wanted to give her the opportunity in the event that she had.
There,
I do know.
I was going to
Pardon?
say Stephen Gray has joined us now, though.
Oh, Stephen Gray has joined us. Yep, I knew there were two that we needed to circle back on. Once you unmute Mr. Gray, you're welcome to go ahead with your comments.
He's been unmuted.
Mr. Gray, can you hear me? Mr. Gray?
He might be having a problem with his microphone.
With his mic, okay. Yeah, I see where he's unmuted. Fair and include, provide him with the opportunity, but obviously we need to be cognizant of keeping the meeting moving. Mr. Gray, if you could perhaps place a comment in the chat to let us know that you can hear us and advise us of any issues you may be having with your microphone, please. Okay, now he's muted. Can we unmute him, attempt to unmute him again? Mr. Gray, can you hear us? Well, regretfully, we will need to move on. Perhaps during the public hearing portion, if Mr. Gray has a comment with respect to any of those items, he'll be provided an opportunity to speak. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, board members, as part of the agenda that was circulated, you should have received the meeting minutes from our January 10th meeting. Hopefully everyone has had an opportunity to review them, and I'd ask that if there are any comments or questions with respect to the content, please let us know now. In the event there is not, we'll entertain a motion to approve the January 10th meeting minutes.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you. I believe that was Mr. Gartland. Is
Yes,
there a
ma'am.
second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. All of those in favor of approving the meeting minutes, I know I've got visuals on at least 4 of you. I'll just do, actually, it's probably easier to do a vote by name. Mr. Gartland? Yea or
Yes.
nay?
Pat
Ms.
Gartland.
Mossbacher? Thank you. Ms. Brooks
Yes.
and Mr. Bruning?
Yes.
And I vote yea as well. The motion passes. Our January 10th meeting minutes are approved. At this point, we'll move into the public hearing portion of the agenda. Ms. Evler, will you be presenting?
I will. Did you want me to go through all 4 first before you open the public hearing?
It might, in this instance, be good to take them individually.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. The first one is to request approval to change the polling location for Smyrna 3B from Shiloh Seventh-day Adventist Church to Cumberland Community Church, beginning as of March 1st, just because we usually pick the first day of the next month. Now, the situation with this one is the Seventh-day Adventist had some storm damage, and we did a temporary change last year to the Cumberland Community Church. We've checked back with Seventh-day Adventist since our temporary change has expired based on the way that we did it and the dates that we made it effective. We need to do something else. Seventh-day Adventist is still having problems and will probably, they said, not be available for some good time to come. So we wanted to just make a permanent change, as permanent as these things are, until the next thing happens, to Cumberland Community Church.
Janine, am I sharing the right one? I think this is the right.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you, Tara.
So you can see that it's fairly close to the other location. I think we had put here that's a third of a mile. And does anyone on the board have a question before we turn it over?
Just to confirm, the rationale for changing this or the issues that are it's the damage to the roof and flooring at Shiloh Seventh-day Adventist. And so essentially having a election as that being a polling place is just not feasible given the issues that are going on at Shiloh, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Does anyone else on the board have any comments or questions about this proposed polling location change?
No.
Nope.
No.
Hearing none, we can go ahead and move to our, I'll entertain any motion to approve the requested change.
Did you want to open the public hearing first?
Oh, I apologize. Public hearing. I know no one had signed up for this, but they don't really need to. So, is there anyone, any attendee, any member of the public that would like to be heard on this proposed change for the Smyrna 3B location, polling location?
And if they do, they should make a comment in the chat
Yes.
so that I can unmute them. I think we had one person that had signed up to speak at, I don't know that she.
Yeah, she signed up to speak with respect to the precinct hearing, which is one of the reasons I didn't want us to present all 4 items under public hearing together, because there are different issues from a polling change versus precinct splits, changing the precinct boundaries. So again, if there is anyone from the public that is with us this afternoon and you'd like to be heard on specifically the polling location change for Smyrna 3B, if you'll place a comment in the chat. Thus far, I don't see anything. Okay. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to on this proposed approval or this proposed request.
I move that we accept this proposal.
Second
Thank
it.
you, Ms. Brooks. Second, was that you, Mr. Gartland?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the polling change as specifically described in the agenda. All those in favor, again, I'll just go down the list and we'll do a vote yay or nay. Ms. Brooks,
Yay.
Ms. Mossbacher,
Yay.
Mr. Gartland,
Yes.
and Mr. Bruning.
Yay.
I also vote yay, the motion passes. Okay. Ms. Evler, you can proceed with item B on the public hearing portion of the agenda.
Yes, okay. So Tara, if you can put up the map for Austell 1A or AU 1A. Thank you. This is to request approval to change the precinct boundary in order to divide Austell 1A, in order to form Austell 1B precinct, that precinct to be located at Love Bridge Church, 5991 Love Street in Austell. The reason for this is that the number of voters, 5,551 at current count, has become too much for the Collar Park Community Center. The elected officials on the city council have been asking for several election cycles now to split the precinct so that the lines at the Austell 1A precinct Collar Park are not so long. So the Vice Mayor, Ms. Anderson, assisted us in finding some additional locations that might be suitable. And this one is slightly outside of what would be the Austell 1B location, but it's very close to the Collar Park Community Center. So if people are not informed, they will at least be able to get to that new place quite quickly. This would result in 2,723 at the new location, the Love Bridge Church, and the remaining 2,828 would stay at the Collar Park Community Center. This is again for the convenience of the voters who have for some time had to stand in quite long lines at this polling location. And so we wanted to assist those voters by splitting this one. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Evler. Are there any comments from members of the board with respect to this proposed precinct split?
Will we be sending out the notifications early enough?
Yes, because this won't go into effect until the May primary. So we'll be sending these out well before the 30-day mark, which is our legal date to send the precinct cards out. We'll also have signage out at the old location and then do our usual social media information.
Thank you.
Ms. Mossbacher, I believe I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, and this sort of relates to all three of them, is that how is redistricting impact these kind of splits? That's sort of my first question.
Well, they don't really. Precinct lines are not considered in district lines. So what we're doing with redistricting is just the governmental districts for each jurisdiction. And those lines intersect at all different places. And so there isn't really a consideration for precinct lines. At some point in the future, probably next year, we would want to maybe adjust some of the boundaries. If we have a precinct that has just a sliver of a district combination, we might want to move that boundary slightly so that that whole combination is in a different, a different precinct. But we wouldn't do that during this time.
And do you see
They
any?
said we would not, I apologize, I apologize for interrupting. You said we would not do that at this time?
We would not do that at this time because we're in an election year. We would do it during a non-election year. So like in 23.
Sure.
Janine, this is Ms. Brooks. I have a question about how any of these precincts might be affected by the cityhood bills and those lines.
That is really just another form of the same answer because the cities are just another jurisdiction. So as you layer different jurisdictions, you have a combination, looking top down, you have a combination of all districts. And those lines for those combinations are not on the precincts. They're not on the city boundaries as well. So, this one, because it is its own city, these are both the city of Austell. They aren't close to Vinings, which is the nearest one. Mableton is probably nearby, but Mableton or Vinings, they can't encroach on these city boundaries because this is already incorporated.
Okay, and I believe that my question probably was a general question where all three of these are concerned, even though we are just considering the Austell 1A and 1B.
Mhm.
Are we aware that, yes, are we aware that there would be that layer affecting the other two proposals?
It's possible. It's possible it will. But again, that is just another, in this case, temporary layer until the referendum is approved. And in that case, it would become a permanent jurisdiction in the layers of combinations.
Okay, thank you.
I'm probably not explaining it right, but when we say district combination, that is wherever geographically all the same districts exist. So all the layers of government all are the same. And if there's anything different, even down to the city boundary, it becomes a different combination. And so you have as many combinations in our county as there are different combinations of different offices.
Okay, thank you.
But again, it doesn't really impact precinct lines. That's a whole different thing.
Denise,
I would say further to that point, it likely does make sense to present all three. I didn't want us to present all four at the same time because obviously A is very different issues from B, C, and D. So I believe I heard Mr. Bruning was about to make a comment. Please do go ahead with your comment, and thereafter Ms. Evler can present C and D. And then we will open it up for comments as to all of them from the board, and thereafter open it up for comments from the public.
let's just go ahead with these. My comment is really more related to redistricting later on.
Okay, got it. So Ms. Evler, please go ahead and present items C and D as well.
Right. Okay, so Tara, if you can put up the one for Smyrna 4A and 4B. There we go. Okay, so this is to request approval to change the boundary and divide Smyrna 4A to form a Smyrna 4B located at the Little Cottage, which is an event center, basically. So this is another large precinct that has over 5,800 active voters. And the facility housing the current precinct Smyrna 4A is the Cobb County School District Brown Professional Learning Center, which is a former elementary school. So it's not huge. And this is another one where we would like, in fact, just to divert a little bit, there are probably another 3 or 4 Smyrna precincts that are getting too large, but we have not yet identified a secondary location. You know, we have, as I think everybody knows, seen a lot of growth in the Smyrna area. So this is one, you know, we'll hopefully find others that we can accommodate the other precincts as well. But this, the Little Cottage, as I said, is an event center, and they don't do events primarily on Tuesdays. So they offered up their facility for Election Day. So this would affect a total of 5888 active voters, and 2494 would go to the Little Cottage, and the remaining 3394 would be remaining at the Brown Professional Building. And again, these two locations are fairly close together. I don't have the actual mileage, but you can kind of see on the map that they're not drastically in different places. So the voters will be going in pretty much the same general area. Are there any questions from the board?
I note that in each instance, notwithstanding the fact that the proposed new location is not very far from the current location, in each instance, both are outside the precinct lines of SN4A and proposed Smyrna 4B.
Yes, that is correct. And we have until 90 days prior to the election to do to establish a polling location outside the precinct lines, and we are still within the 90 days of the May primary.
Okay. Item D. Oh, well, I apologize. Are there any other comments or questions from board members specifically with regard to item C?
Janine, I actually had a question going back to Austell, because in my time on the board, I have never heard a request from a municipality to try to intervene to prevent long wait times. And I guess for all three of these splits, I'm wondering what our records indicate as far as wait times. And I mean, what our historic time frame
Well-
has been, because I know that we've had so many factors, pandemic, et cetera, that have
Mhm.
affected what trending we may see.
Right, and we don't necessarily keep a record of wait times. We do have an election day wait time for general elections. And I unfortunately did not pull that. I meant to do that. But I can say that Austell 1A had in 2018 had 2,300 voters vote on election day. And in 2020, that grew to 3,338. And if you'll recall, this was one that was extremely affected in the June 9th primary of 2020, where, you know, we saw a lot of polls in South Cobb that had some long lines, and Austell was one of the ones that was hit pretty hard. I can certainly get you the numbers of the wait times, but I can tell you anecdotally that they've had long wait times, especially in the June primary on June 9th.
Thank you.
If there's nothing further, Ms. Eveler, you can move forward with presenting the last item, item
All
D.
right. Yes. Okay, and that's the fourth map, Tara, for Wade Green. Okay, so this is to request approval to divide Wade Green 02. Now, this kind of has some history. We used to have Wade Green 01 and Wade Green 02, and the Wade Green 01 church that we were using decided not to be a polling location. And this area is very hard to find large facilities. So we were unsuccessful in finding a place to rehome Wade Green 01. So what we did is combine 1 and 2 at the Wade Green 02 location. So we kept the name Wade Green 02. And it has been at a church, which is Christ Episcopal Church. And that church has never been big enough for the whole precinct. But that's what we ended up having to do. And in 2018, they got such a turnout there that their grass was ruined, their flower beds were ruined, people parked on the grass in the flowers. And so we had our wonderful parks employees that came out and restored that property. And we met with the pastor and they were ready to leave. And so we pretty much begged to stay and that we would do something to reduce the number of people at that polling location. Unfortunately, we were not able to do that until today, but what saved us in 2020 is so many people voted early by mail and in person that they were saved from another event like what happened in 2018. So what we have here today is re-splitting that precinct. We had a new player, a new church called Christ Harvester Global Outreach Ministries. They took over a building that was a different congregation. They're willing to be a polling location. So what we are proposing is to re-split this precinct so that that gives relief to the Christ Episcopal and puts the other Wade Green 01 back in place at the Global Outreach Ministry. Now, both of these, as you pointed out, Chairwoman, are outside the precinct boundaries. The folks that vote here, there really are not any properties that are inside the location. It just doesn't have any facilities really. So they have been going to the Christ Episcopal. Some will have to go a little bit further. You know, I'm sorry, it's not as close as I would like, but it's just there isn't anything else available in there. So what it works out to is 2,683 would be at the new location, the Harvester Global Outreach, and the remaining 2,175 will stay at Christ Episcopal Church.
How far is the proposed new location from the previous location? In addition to that, do we know the furthest distance that someone that is presently or that would be in proposed Wade Green 02 would have to travel to get to the new location? For example, I believe it reads that that border looks to be Carlton something Commons. That looks to be the furthest distance.
So actually, the Wade Green 02 will stay at Christ Episcopal, and that's the current location. It is the Wade Green 01, the green section
That's
that will be
moving
going
to.
to the new place. Yeah.
So then still the furthest distance someone from Wade Green 01 would need to travel to the new. Well, I guess the first question is how far away is the new location, the proposed new location from the current location?
Yes. So according to my Google Maps, it is not in walking. Well, it's not. Let's see. Well, unfortunately, I did not prepare this ahead of time.
No worries. The benefit of actually working remotely or it's meeting remotely is I'm going to try to jump on and see if I can do a quick Google Maps search.
Exactly. Oh, Kendra has texted me 1 mile. It's also good to have staff that is also listening in. She says it's
Absolutely.
1 mile from one to the other pole.
Okay.
And that appears to be close to a major thoroughfare also. So, because I considered distance, but I considered time travel as well,
Yes.
or the difficulty.
And just to the extent you've raised the point of a major thoroughfare, maybe I just need a new pair of glasses. What major, and it's not, I don't see it noted, what major thoroughfare are you referring to, Jessica?
Maybe it's just a creek since I'm not wearing glasses either, Tori.
Yeah, just to the extent we've noted it, I wanted to at a minimum reference the street name.
Am I correct with that, Janine, or is
Yeah,
that?
there's Wade Green Road is the
Okay.
main north-south, and then
Shiloh Road, going east-west.
Shiloh Road. Yes, thank you.
Shiloh Road, okay.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
Of course, yeah, it's open.
So I'm kind of a data person, and what I want to understand a little bit is I get that there's a lot of history that probably took place before we got on the board, but when I look at, sort of what we're sort of governed by now under code for poll splitting, it delineates pretty clearly, wait times before and wait times, wait times from check-in to voting, wait times at the end of the night, and how that all those things are measured. I know we don't have all that data yet, but in light of everything that's going on, do we think, I'm going to sort of go back to a question I've kind of posed before, is it prudent to split 3 polls, especially when we're looking at things that are, outside the precincts, we might have other line changes, and we don't have all the data that really delineates wait times in today's environment. Like how many people vote early from each of these polls now? Things like that. Does that make sense? I'm kind of looking for that data, those data points that would say, here's why we need to split these polls. And I want to look at it as like data points, not just as conjecture.
Okay, well, I think most polling locations, the ideal number of people in that location is going to be between 3,000 and 4,000. And, that leaves room for people to vote early and then not have wait times on election day.
Okay, I mean, the code is saying, anytime there's more than 2,000, we revisit the poll. So I would take that as 2,000 is ideal, right? Like that's what they're saying in this code. 2,000 is ideal. And then if we can't complete voting within an hour of close, or if people have to wait in line for more than an hour to check in, that those are our benchmarks, right? Like that's what we're working with at this stage.
Well, that's the requirement, and that's going to be the minimum requirement. That's not being proactive. That's waiting for the lines to happen and then taking measures for the next one. I have been able to pull up Austell 1A from 2018. They closed the poll at 9:37.
And 28, that was 2018?
2018. And remember, 2020 was unusual because of the early voting that was pretty prominent. Smyrna 4A closed at 8:30 on November 6th of 2018. And let's see if I can find the Wade Green. Wade Green 02 did close at 7:03, but again, this is a special circumstance to basically keep an existing polling location from leaving.
Should be further.
And do we have the stats on what the percentage of people that voted early in 2020 and 2018 was for those polls?
Okay. I only have those that voted on election day. I did not capture the number that voted early.
Okay. I guess for me personally, I feel like looking at some of those data points would help me to make a more informed decision about splitting voters in a time where there already might be some confusion. And I get that there's things that predated me, 100%. I get that and respect that you put a lot of energy into finding polls. I just like to look at the data that says this is absolutely necessary in terms of sort of disrupting voter pattern. Because I know that voters get used to voting where they're voting. So when we move them, I want to make sure, for me personally, that I'm making that decision in their best interest based upon data. That's kind of how I look at it.
I understand that. I can't always provide the data that you're looking for, you know, when you wait until the meeting to tell me that you need that data. But I would just say, you know, if the downside is people are confused about where to go, and the converse of that is they wait 3 or 4 hours in line, you know, those are opposite solutions. And so which is the lesser evil?
I guess, are they waiting 3 or 4 hours in line? That's what I'm trying to figure out. That's what I'd like to know for a fact. That's just me. I don't know. I mean, I'm only one vote on the board, so.
Well, I understand. And we, you know, we don't have the 3 times a day data because
Sure.
that's a new law. But we have from the general elections, the last time that the voters, like the last voter voted. And that's what I was talking about earlier.
Sure, right, I've got that.
I think in the long run, perhaps we should establish a program to target the larger precincts or the precincts that have long lines to proactively look at changing those precincts and not and do it more of as a more proactive planned attack as opposed to we, at least I have the impression these are that we're reacting in most cases. And I think in the long run, a program to try to predict these problems ahead of time would be might help Jennifer in her deliberations. I think personally, I think all 3 of these are good candidates and ones that we should do. But in the long run, we need to kind of organize the process and have a meter that clicks somehow along the way and identifies how many of these we really need to deal with.
Well,
Further to that, oh, I apologize.
that's okay.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that this is proactive. This is looking ahead because of past data and knowing where we've had problems in the past to try and solve the problem. You know, we have lots of other ones that we would like to solve, that we have on our list to solve, where there isn't another polling facility that allows us to do that. For instance, when the little cottage, you know, we were able to secure that location, there are 3 or 4 other polling precincts that we would like to split in that area, but we picked Smyrna 4A because that is the closest one to the little cottage. But we need 3 or 4 more locations in that area. And so as we find locations, then we propose these splits in the right timing. Now, you know, we're not going to do this in the middle of an election cycle. This is the last time we'll be able to do that for this whole cycle. So we're looking forward to November and trying to solve a problem that will happen in November, you know, barring any unusual circumstances like we had in 20.
Thank you to fellow board members for your comments, as well as to Ms. Evler for your response. I do have a question with respect to the Wade Green resplit, if you will. My understanding is that presently Christ Episcopal Church, have they advised you that and you did provide context for the issues that, you know, arose in connection with, you know, damage to property and what have you, and that we were able to resolve that by having city workers go out and put things back the way they should have been. Have they advised you that they are wanting to terminate their agreement? And if they, whether they have or whether they haven't, please share with us the terms upon which they can terminate the agreement. As for, most importantly, the amount of notice that they would need to provide to us if they were to terminate the agreement.
Yes,
And excuse me, and Janine, I know that you're going to answer that question. I'm not sure that I heard when the split, as Tori said. I'm not sure I know how recently that has been, that 02
That would have been the
was.
combination. You're referring to the
Yes,
point that
yes,
we
I'm-
combined them to
Yes.
form. Oh, what? Okay.
The one, yes, I'm just wondering how recently that has been. I don't know if you shared that. If you did, I missed.
I did not. I can have somebody check on that. Oops, I'm sorry, my phone's ringing. So I can have one of the staff members check on that right now.
Okay, thank you.
So-
But I would like my question answered.
Yes, I apologize for jumping in when I did. I
I'm sorry, Chairwoman, can you repeat that, please?
rephrased it.
Yeah, absolutely. To the extent that we have a concern that the current polling location will terminate their agreement with us, I want to understand how, what that, looks like. Are they required to provide us 90 days notice, 30 days notice, 60 days notice? We obviously have that 90-day period, but prior to which we must, because it's going to be outside the precinct boundary. So I want to understand the dynamics there.
Yes, so they, first of all, they have not said that they are looking to leave us. As I said, we met face to face with the pastor after the 2018 election and basically begged them not to leave us and, offered to make these changes to their property so that they could be whole again. And then we agreed to reduce the number of people that would be voting there. And we didn't actually do that again in 2020. We went into that with the same numbers of voters, but we kind of were saved by the fact that people voted early. As far as the contract, that most of our contracts, in the more recent years, have said that they have to give us 90 days notice and it cannot be in a governor or presidential year. So they would be really forced to go through this year, until next year to drop out.
Thank you. I do note that Ms. Brooks did raise a question about the point at which we combined them into Wade Green 02, such
Yes.
that if we could find that information out, that would be good. I recognize that there have been a number of comments and questions from the board with regard to each of the proposed precinct splits. But I obviously do want to open up the public hearing portion so that we can hear from the public on this. Ms. Reed, if you will open up, I believe Ms. Jacqueline Bedatapour, if you'll let her, she has signed up to provide comment.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, this is Jacqueline Bedatapour. I'm the chair of the Cobb County Democratic Party. So recently, Ms. Evler sent a letter to the Assistant County Manager explaining the significant challenges the department is facing in preparing for the March 7 to 11 qualifying period and the May 24th primary election. I have to say, in reading that letter, I suffered a bit of PTSD stemming from the 2020 primary election. We faced significant challenges of a different kind then, but challenges none the same. A completely new voting system, a pandemic, staff and poll worker shortages. What resulted was an epic failure at the polls. I fear we are headed that way again, and an alarm was sounded in that letter to county management. What I'm hearing in this discussion is large polls that we feel need to be split. I think this is the absolute wrong time to be splitting precincts. It adds another layer of complexity to the redistricting, the cityhood initiatives, a special election under old maps, a primary under new maps, and local maps that have not even been approved. And when they are, they're sure to be challenged in court. All of this coupled with a severe turnover in employees led Ms. Evler to sound that alarm, stating that these additional complications to our workload increases the risk level for error and failure to meet deadlines. Precinct splits just add another layer of complexity. Now, these number of registered voters is not the real measure. What we should be looking at is the election day turnout, the voting load in a precinct on election day. And I've heard Austell 1A had long lines in the 2020 primary, but that was because equipment was failed to be delivered on time. People didn't know how to use the new voting systems. It was extenuating circumstances. When we talk about long lines compared to 2018, we did not have nearly the early vote coverage that we have now and that we are proposing. And early vote locations take the load off precincts on election day. So I'm just wondering why Austell 1A, Smyrna A, and Wade Green 04 being compared to, being said that they had long wait times in 2018 and 2020, I don't think is a relevant comparison to what would go on this year. So further, in terms of number of registered voters, Smyrna 4A ranks number 9, Austell 1A ranks number 11, and Wade Green ranks number 25 out of all of our precincts in terms of the number of registered voters. So why these precincts and why now? This appears to be a solution in search of a problem, and it may actually cause more problems. So precinct splits require new maps, reassigning voters to a different voting location, preparing ballots with still yet another complicating factor. Voters are already confused as it is, many not knowing what districts they now live in. And these proposed precinct splits are just another layer of complexity and work burden that is not required or necessary. I'm asking you to not make a bad situation worse, and I ask that you all vote no on the proposed precinct splits. I don't feel that it's necessary at this point in time, and it will just create more chaos and complexity to an already difficult situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bedadapur, for your comments. While I recognize that she signed up, registration was not required, at least for this public hearing portion. Are there others that would like to be heard on the precinct split? Other members of the public that are present with us virtually today that would like to be heard? If you will place a comment in the chat. Okay. Ms. Northrup, if we can unmute Ms. Northrup, she has placed a comment in the chat.
Hi,
She's
this is
placed a
Shelby.
question.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I just had a quick question of how could these proposals impact voters?
That's a very general question. Obviously, the potential location where they are voting will change, or the location that they vote at will potentially change. I'm happy to defer to Ms. Evler with regard to any additional specifics in response to Ms. Northrup's question as to how these proposals will impact voters. But obviously, if we're splitting the precinct, if they were previously voting using the Wade Green example, if they were previously voting at Wade Green 02 location, those that will now be in the Wade Green 01 precinct will vote somewhere else. Ms.
Chairwoman,
Evler, do you have anything further to add?
I just wanted to add an answer to the question you asked earlier of when the split with Wade Green 01 and 2, and that was 2013.
So at that point, that's when we combined Wade Greeno 1 and Wade Greeno 2 to be Wade Greeno 2. And that was the
Yes.
only precinct. Okay.
Yes. And, you know, the precinct grew in population until the point where we had the problem. So we feel that at that number of voters, it should be 2 precincts.
Do we know what the voter numbers were when it was combined in 2013?
No, I'm sorry. I don't have that. All of that can be found, but I don't have it with me.
Understood. Responses to questions generally beget more questions, and we do understand.
I
at this point you're
understand.
limited in the in your access to information right now, but it is something I think that is relevant.
Yes. I would just, you know, like to make a general comment. You know, there are some counties that have gotten into trouble by combining precincts and trying to go with, you know, a super precinct, like 1 location for the whole county or 3 for the whole county. And of course, that is looked at as an infringement on the voters' access. And so what we're trying to do here is really open up more access, give people, you know, more precincts among the voting population in Cobb that is growing. If you continue to keep the same number of precincts and the population grows, then obviously, you know, anybody can deduce that that's going to increase lines. So we are trying to grow the number of precincts commensurate with the numbers of voters that are growing in Cobb. And as far as, you know, why isn't this precinct being split or that precinct being split? It's really an opportunity presents itself. We have lots of red flags that we would like to address. But when something presents itself where we get a facility that's willing to be that second location, that's why we choose the ones that we choose. But there are many that that are, you know, hot button areas. It's just a general comment, but that's what I wanted to say.
Okay. Does any other member of the public want to provide comment during this public hearing portion with regard to items B, C, and D?
Yes, I've had a couple of people send me a chat privately. The first is Pamela Riordan, and I have
Sure.
unmuted her.
Hi again, Pamela Riordan, and it's not very often that I agree with a Democrat, but I agree with the chair of the Democrat Party on her comments. And I really think at this point in time, we really don't need to be splitting precincts and adding to the confusion. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Riordan. Next up, Kendra, whomever reached out to you to let you know if you'll unmute them.
I'm gonna unmute Stephen Gray. He had some questions. If I can unmute him. Stephen, are you able to make a comment? If not, I can read your comment.
Maybe Mr. Gray still having mic
Yes.
issues. Yeah, if you will please read his comments.
Sure. He's asked, what are there more precincts that need to be split? And what impact will these have since the new restrictions on VBM and early vote?
I'm sorry, what was that acronym? What are the with
VBM and early vote?
B as in Victor, B as in boy, M as in Mary?
Correct.
Vote by mail.
He is clarified.
Okay, please, thank you. I don't want to make any assumptions.
Sure.
So Ms. Evler, if you could address the
Yes.
question that's proposed by Mr. Gray.
So as we talked about earlier, absentee mail and early voting opportunities, you know, were utilized heavily in November of 2020, and that did take a lot of the pressure off the election day polls. But we also know that the voting laws have been changed, and there are restrictions or constrictions on those types of voting opportunities, especially the absentee mail. So if more people, choose not to vote by mail because of the limited time frame for applying, because there are limited numbers of drop boxes, then that number of people that go to the polls will increase again. So again, we are looking forward and trying to address an expanding population and issues that we've seen in the past so that we can prevent there being problems in the future.
Okay. Ginger, were there any other members of the public that indicated that they would like to speak?
No.
Are there any additional comments or questions from members of the board?
I'd like to say, this is Pat Gartland. Any way we can decrease the lines and let the people vote, then less standing around and waiting, that's less griping. So I think what Janine's doing is what they're doing is right. And I think any way we can help the public and the voter to not stand in line, this is what we need to be doing. And we're far enough out to give notification to everybody, to those voters as well.
Anything further? Yes, Jennifer.
I just want to say, for me, it's a data, like, I really want to look at it from a data perspective before we disrupt voters in their patterns. That's my number one. It's not any kind of dig against the work that Janine's done prior and the team prior. The other thing I think is our early vote offering, the way, in order to sort of mitigate the amount of people who vote on election day, we can offer a robust early vote, and that's going to drive people to the polls. I think it's sort of antiquated in a lot of ways to look at it that everybody votes on election day, because I think we've seen now that when we put out a robust offering, we have lots of locations, lots of time, people vote early because they vote when it's convenient for them, because a lot of times on that Tuesday of election day, something comes up and people can't get to the polls. And having worked the polls, we saw that decrease. That early vote was where there was lines and people really wanted those options, versus on election day, we still have a plethora of options. Everybody still has a place to go, and there wasn't long lines in a lot of places. So I just still say I do have concerns about splitting polls right now in the midst of all the things that are going on, and without having that specific data that really tells me these polls need it. But that's me. That's just sort of where I stand. And it's not a disrespect to anybody.
Thank you. I will say this, and then if there are no further comments, I'll entertain any motion. If there are no further comments from the board, I'll entertain any motion that a board member wants to propose. I also have concerns about the level of confusion that this can create, given the number of moving parts. You've got a special election for HD 45, then you've got a primary election that will likely be under a different map for HD 45. And while I understand the levels that you made reference to, Ms. Evler, with respect to jurisdictions, those concepts and those ideas at times are difficult for those of us that, while not you, I mean, you do this every day, we the board less so, but those concepts are difficult or can be confusing for those of us that are more intimately familiar with this process. And I just don't know that I can. One is no more or no less important than the other. Definitely, want to be certain that we're providing access and not inconvenience to members of the public when they go and vote, such that we don't want them standing in long lines if the data does bear that out. But the other question is, do we then potentially disrupt voters by creating confusion as to the number of changes? It's not unheard of or would not be unheard of for them to receive this notice with respect to precinct changes and then receive a subsequent notice, albeit not related to the precinct, but in connection with redistricting later in the year, and that invariably could cause confusion. So therein lies my concern. Having said that, and again, I don't believe any other members of the board are indicating that they have questions or further comment at this time. If there is a motion that a member of the board would like to propose, we'll entertain that at this time.
Tori?
Yes, I'm here.
I'd like to move that we approve the 3 precinct changes that are proposed in the agenda. Austell, Wade Green, and Smyrna.
And I'll second that.
I would like to make a comment on the,
I apologize, just from a procedural matter. I asked for comments a few moments ago, so I don't know that we're in the middle of potentially a vote. I also perhaps, another procedural matter is whether we want to take up a vote on all 3 at once versus taking them individually. But please go ahead with your comments, Steve.
I just had a question for Janine on the matter of voters receiving notices. Would these precincts all receive the notices about the new locations and the redistricting all at the same time?
No, we would order the cards for the precinct change first, and they would get a card that says your polling location has been changed. The new location is this. And then after redistricting is complete, then almost all of Cobb will receive a different precinct card that has their polling location and their district numbers for each of the offices. So they'll get basically 2 cards informing them of their polling location for these voters that are being affected by these changes.
Tori, since you entertained last comment, I think probably from Steve, I wanted to say that once again, this is difficult. The decisions are difficult for me, particularly where the Austell request is concerned, because there was a specific request of us. My concerns always are partially with data, with Jen, but also with what the voter education programming will be. And the fact that Austell made the request, I think maybe implies that Austell also will take some responsibility for voter education in this situation. But because I am thinking the way I'm thinking, I would like to make a motion that we consider each one of these proposals separately.
Are you proposing an amendment to the previous motion, or Mr. Bruning, would you like to withdraw your motion?
I'll be glad to withdraw my motion.
Okay. Then I would like to propose an amend. Oh, well, I don't even have to amend it. That's right. I don't even have to amend it. Okay.
So do you want to propose a new motion, Ms. Brooks?
Yes, I'd like to propose that we consider each one of the proposals separately as board members.
Okay. And that's perfectly fine. Do you have a motion that you want to make with respect to the first item? Because we don't need a motion that we take them up separately.
We take them separately? Okay, I didn't understand that. Okay, so then my proposal is that my motion is that where I guess the first is Austell, the change in Austell. Be accepted by the board.
So Ms. Brooks is moving that the requested change be approved by the board. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Dare I ask, is there further comment or questions? Okay, hearing none. Again, we'll just do a voice vote. Ms. Brooks? Yay or nay, please?
Yay.
Ms. Mossbacher?
No.
Mr. Bruning?
Yay.
Mr. Gartland?
Yay.
Chairman Silas, no. The yeas have it. Is there a motion with respect to the item C?
Which one is that?
Apologies. Item C is the proposal to divide Smyrna 4A in order to form Smyrna 4B.
I'll make that motion.
I'll
And
second it.
your motion, Mr. Bruning, is to approve the requested change.
Yes, ma'am.
And I note your second, Mr. Gartland.
Yes.
Any comments before we move into a vote? And if you'll note, I'm just simply going in alphabetical order with women first. Ms. Brooks, your vote, please.
Nay.
Ms. Mossbacher,
No.
Mr. Bruning,
Yay.
Mr. Gartland,
Yay.
and my vote is nay. That motion fails. Is there a motion with regard to item D? And this is the resplitting, if you will, of the Wade Green precinct to form Wade Green 01. Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Bruning, your motion is to approve the requested change. Is there a second?
I think that was Pat Gartland, and I will be
Oh, I
glad to second.
apologize. Mr.
I'll-
Gartland.
And I'll second it.
If that's
Okay,
the worst, if that's the worst thing happening today, I got it made.
at least for a Monday.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gartland. I've noted your second, Mr. Bruning. We'll go ahead, do just a voice vote. Ms. Brooks,
Nay.
Ms. Mossbacher,
No.
Mr. Bruning,
Yay.
Mr. Gartland,
Yay.
and my vote is nay. That motion fails. Okay. Thank everyone, the public as well as my fellow board members, and of course you, Ms. Evler, for the additional information, the conversation and discourse around the proposed precinct changes. We definitely don't, as Ms. Mossbacher made mention of, we don't look upon it lightly, the work that you and your team undertakes with regard to these proposals. Moving on to the fourth item on the agenda, we're going to turn it over at this point to Ms. Evler.
Yes, okay, so I think she has probably already left the call because we had a 4 o'clock, which I knew I wasn't gonna make, but I think she
Okay.
went to that. But I would like to introduce our new registration manager, Erica Hamilton. Erica, as many of you probably know, was the director of elections in DeKalb County. And she resigned from that position, and we are lucky enough to have her as our new registration manager. She's highly qualified, and she has really taken the redistricting bull by the horns and gotten the team really on track with that task. So I really appreciate what she's done so far and look forward to a good relationship going forward. And then part of this is also, I did want to provide status on the hiring of our vacant positions. As as you probably all know, we lost quite a few of our folks at the end of last year. At the same time, we were trying to hire 5 new positions. So, you know, we were trying to get ahead on 5 new positions and then got further behind with people leaving. We also, just to let you all know for the first time today, that my assistant Krista Watson is leaving us as well. She's going to the communications department. So her last day will be the 18th, this Friday. And then we are losing our prep center manager, Gary Miller, who will be retiring as of the 18th of March. So as it goes, we get a little ahead and we get a little behind. And right now we have, of those positions, we've filled 8 and we still have 8 vacancies. So we have some, you know, work to do still, and we have some positions posted, but we're also waiting on HR to post some new postings as well to get us going.
Okay, quickly, with respect to the 8 vacancies, you noted that some of them are posted and some of them are not. How many of the 8 are not posted, and do we have timing within which I recognize the time and I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but I want to get a sense, while all staff positions are extremely important, given the pending elections that your office needs to manage, of the 5 that are, or I'm sorry, of the 8 that are vacant, how many of them are not yet posted? And do we have a timing from HR within which we expect those postings to be approved and made?
We have, I think 3 that I'm waiting on HR to publish.
Okay.
We have, you know, of course, Krista's is not yet started yet because hers is not
Understood.
vacant. So,
Okay.
the 8 includes all of those.
Okay, got it.
There's probably another 5 that we need to post.
Is the prep center manager position posted?
It is, and we have done our interviews. We have made a selection and offered, but we are again waiting on HR to tell us if that salary offer is acceptable or not. And so the way that goes is usually they'll either yes or no, and then if it's no, we go back to negotiating with the applicant to see if there's a lesser amount that will still accept the position, or they walk away. So.
Okay, got it. Thank you for those details.
Yes. So if there are no other questions on that item, I'll move on to the next. This is a board action item, so we are requesting approval to conduct a nonpartisan election for the Georgia Soil and Water Conservation Commission on November 8th, 2022, and further that the chairwoman sign the memorandum of agreement, which is included in your agenda package. They are asking for all counties in Georgia to approve the memorandum to conduct the election and return it by the 18th of February.
Okay, thank you. Are there members of the board that have any questions with respect to this request to conduct this nonpartisan election in November? Doesn't appear to be any questions, or does not appear to be any questions or comments. Is there a motion with regard to the request?
I move we approve the agreement to conduct a nonpartisan election.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. It's been moved and properly seconded. We'll go ahead and vote. Ms. Brooks, your vote, yay or nay?
Yay.
Ms. Mosbacher,
Yay.
Mr. Bruning,
Yay.
Mr. Gartland,
Yay.
and my vote is yay as well. The motion passes. Go ahead, Ms. Edler, with regard to item C.
Thank you. This is a request, also board action. This is a request for approval to conduct a special election for the city of Smyrna, and further that the chairwoman sign the contract. This is related to the Smyrna Ward 2 council person who has resigned from his position.
When I'm sorry, go ahead. Did you have anything further to add with
Nope.
regard to that?
No, ma'am.
Okay. For minutes, because the date of the election is not noted in the agenda item, when would this election take place?
This would be with the May 24th primary.
Does anyone else on the board have comments or questions with regard to this request? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I make a motion that we accept that to put for the board member.
Okay. Hearing Mr. Gartland's motion to approve us conducting a special election or Cobb County conducting a special election for the city of Smyrna and to sign the corresponding agreement or the contract. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh,
Thanks, Mr. Bruning. Again, voice vote. Ms. Brooks,
yay.
Ms. Mossbacher,
Yay.
Mr. Bruning,
Yay.
Mr. Gartland,
Yay.
and my vote is yay as well. The motion passes.
Okay.
Items D and E.
Yes, the next item, I don't know, Chairwoman, if you would like to, or at what point you would like to discuss the April 5th special election?
Yes, I noted that that was not on the agenda. And I understand that things are moving quickly with regard to that. So because that's the special election for the person that will succeed to the position of House Representative for District 45. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes, correct.
Okay. We can go ahead and you can go ahead and provide an update on that now.
Okay, so before we get into the advanced voting maps and all for May, just to kind of start from the beginning, we on Friday learned that we would be having a special election on April 5th and potentially a runoff on May 3rd to fill the vacancy in the current term that was House District 45 due to the resignation of Representative Matt Dollar. The election will be with the list of voters that are currently in District 45. So this presents a little tricky problem for us because we have to, right before we go into redistricting and redistrict the whole county, we have to pull a list of the existing House District 45 voters. And the meeting at 4 was what Erica went to, was related to exactly how we're going to populate that list in the voting apparatus. For instance, the electors list in the poll pad. So, you know, at this point, we're not really sure how it's going to go. It's not supported by the equipment that we have. Worst case scenario, it's a paper list like the old days. We're hoping it's not that, and that they'll come up with something brilliant for us to do it on the existing equipment. But we do have to come up with the advanced voting locations and excuse me, the times. Now, related to the locations, unfortunately, we could not get a location in House District 45. We did secure a facility at the East Cobb Government Services Center, which is outside the district, but in the East Cobb area. Excuse me. However, we are still, like I said, trying to figure out the logistics of how to run the election. And if worst case, we do have a paper list, the Secretary of State's office recommended that we limit our locations to the main office. Rather than have lists out everywhere and potentially have issues with double voting. So, I mean, we can go forward with the assumption that that is going to be resolved and talk about the hours that you would like the locations to be open, assuming that there will be two. I think the flyer, the draft flyer that I sent earlier, I don't have that, or maybe Tara, can I email that to you right now to put up?
Yes.
Okay, let me try and do that.
I'll, while Ms. Evler is providing the flyer, for display, do any members of the board have any comments or questions for Ms. Evler as it relates to the proposed advance voting options for this House District 45 special election to be held on April 5th, 2022?
I have a question, since I'm one of the affected voters. What would be the date when final decision would be made by us about whether we can resolve whatever problems there are with trying to conduct this election?
Well, I'm hoping that that meeting at 4 o'clock that Erica is attending, that there will be a solution presented at that meeting. It was with the Secretary of State, us, and Fulton, because Fulton has a couple of precincts in House District 45 as well. So having this meeting previously scheduled, I don't know what's happening, but I'm hoping they have a solution that we learn about immediately after this.
Okay.
Should we table making a decision about this until we have that answer? It seems to me that those things would relate, like that we would need to know that to make a good decision. Correct?
And well, one, I'll defer to Ms. Evler on that. I apologize. I wanted to confirm something, but well, actually, no, it's related. So to the extent that any decision comes down, it would impact these locations and the dates and times proposed, or no?
It would be, you know, we don't meet, this board doesn't meet again until March 14th, so that would be too late to make any decisions. You know, really the only, well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I think if you all come up with what you think is the right times, the dates are set. You know, the dates are by law. If you approve the times of day that we are proposing, if we want to talk about weekends and all of that, you know, the Saturdays are there by law as well. So then the optional is just whether to do Sunday or not, whether to do as long as 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or some shorter time period. The idea that we approve East Cobb Government Center, you know, that I would like to see the board approve that, but if we are forced by technicality, by technical limitations to keep it only at the main office, then we would have to remove that location. I don't know if that affects the situation or not.
And what would be, I apologize. Go ahead, Jen. You were asking a question. I want to be certain your questions are answered.
If we only offered one location, sorry, you have to excuse my voice. If we only offered one location, does that have to be the main office? That's
It does, yes.
Okay, so that has to be the main office. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I definitely, I think we want to offer the East, if that's the only location, if that's as close as we can get to HD 45, I think we want to offer East Cobb Government Center for sure then. But I didn't know if that.
Without a doubt. I mean, it's too far. A lot of people won't even vote to go that far. So I think we need to leave it with the East Cobb Government Center, as well as, you know, it's just, that's in the area.
Great. But to the extent that there are technical limitations that we subsequently are advised on such that we have to remove it, we've at a minimum done our diligence going forward, to Pat's point about offering a voting location as close to the district as possible. So it would seem, and please jump in here, anyone, if I'm wrong, it would seem that the question here is with what that remains is with respect to the any additional days, i.e. a Sunday, and for the most part, hours on any of the dates that are noted here before us. Is that right, Janine?
Yes, that's my take. We also would prefer, obviously doing the closer location. And we won't publish this. We have to publish it at least 14 days before it happens. But if we're still working on a solution, we have some time before we publish it and before it becomes official. But, we'll hopefully have the answer later today or tomorrow.
I have a question on special elections like this, or a comment. The feedback that I heard from workers at the facilities last time, early voting facilities, is particularly the special election or the runoff for the Marietta precinct. They felt like we were abusing them in terms of asking them to be there for those long periods, long days with very, very, very few voters. And I sympathize with them. And I really wonder, when we have a special case like this, if we would be prudent to maybe trim this to 1 week early voting as opposed to 3 weeks. It just seems, the person who's elected in this election will never set foot in the House. It's
Right.
I don't quite understand why we have to do this. I know it's the law, so we have to do it. But given the circumstances and the timing, it's pretty futile to think that we're going to go to all this cost and trouble and effort for a figurehead, for someone to be a figurehead for a brief period of time. And anyway, but besides, that's a different point. The point is, do we really want to be open 3 weeks? In this case, I'm all for a full 3 week Sunday, as much as we can, come the primary, come the general election. But for these special elections, I really am concerned that it's not really worth it. And it is a challenge to the workers. And I know last time I got an earful from a couple, and they're glad to work, but they hate to work when there's
Nobody there.
nobody there. So I just raised that as a question, because March the 14th through April the 1st, that's a pretty long period. And if we were just open the 25th through the 1st, so we get a Friday and a Saturday and the week before the election, seems to me like that would be a more practical situation. Or maybe we were open the whole time in the main office because people are already there, and just for that last week in the East Cobb Government Center. I don't live in that district, but we do have people who do. How would you all feel?
If I might interject just for a moment, we are required at the main office to be open all 3 weeks. We do have discretion to be open at a satellite location for whatever time the board chooses. So the last suggestion you made is viable. Not having 3 full weeks at the main office is not allowed.
And I would defer to Jessica or Ms. Brooks in the manner as it relates to, you know, what's likely to be necessary for those individuals that live in the district. I will note, however, and I don't know what the exact mileage is, but I mean, to the extent that the East Cobb Government Center is closer to the district and recognizing that, as Ms. Eveler made mention of, the main office must be open. I don't know that it would be a matter of in lieu of, for example, have main office in lieu of East Cobb, because it seems like the East Cobb Government Center would be more convenient for those voters that live in the district.
I would say that many people who live in this particular district may not venture beyond the square in going west. And I also just am reminded that we've talked a lot about consistency over the years. So not only would my preference be that we do the entire 3 weeks at the East Cobb Governmental Center, but even looking at Saturdays in order to, with the deepest respect for our employees, our poll workers, I would even propose that we have the Saturdays open until 6 o'clock, just so it's consistent. I have to laugh because at one point professionally, I hired college students to work at historic sites. And one of the questions that was asked during interviews is, what do you do when there's nothing to do? So as long as that's the expectation of our employees, that could happen at any point. That could happen on election day at some polling locations. So it certainly happens at our advanced voting locations, but I believe that that the voters who live in and around me, and I happen to know Matt Dollar. He went to high school with my son. They graduated in the same class. But I think that the voters would expect 3 weeks. They're accustomed to 3 weeks advance voting. This is one location, and that's my preference.
So is there, well, is there further, I guess, conversation about dates and or times and or locations, recognizing that the 3 weeks is non-negotiable from the perspective of hosting voting or having the main office serve as a polling location? Yes, Jennifer.
I'll just chime in. I think 3 weeks has to be at the East Cobb Government Center. I also am a House District 45 resident, and I definitely, if we can't swap out one for if the main office is required, which it is, I understand. I think we also have to offer the 3 weeks at the East Cobb Government Center. I think that's legitimate for the residents in this district. And then I just want to say that I do agree with Jessica. I think consistency is important. I think just keeping the offerings simple and consistent makes the most sense. I absolutely recognize that the workers, 3 weeks is a long time, and to work from 7 to 7 is a long time. I would love to see us put either shifts in place or people work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or, that there was more fluidity in the way that workers could work. I know that's not our place to decide, but I'm just a proponent of the 3 weeks, 7 to 7 on the weekdays, and I'm okay with the 9 to 5 on the weekends, but I'm a working person, and I feel like, having those extra hours makes sense for people who work.
So what I believe I heard are for the March 14th through 18th, 21st through 25th, and 28th through April the 1st, the proposal would be 7 to 7 p.m. or is that what I heard?
There's me personally, I would do 7 to 7 on the weekdays, 9 to 5 on the Saturday. I'm fine with that. I think that gives good coverage, and I think that it should be in both locations. That's and I feel like that then is consistent. It leads us into everything else that we're probably about to do. So there's no question for voters in, whether it's May or November or June or however many different elections we have to have coming up. We just have consistency, and it's from a voter communication standpoint, it just makes a lot of sense to me to be able to say, in Cobb County, we run 3 weeks, 7 to 7 on the weekdays, 9 to 5 on Saturday.
Okay. Anyone else? Is there a motion on the floor, or is there a motion to be proposed?
I can make a motion that we accept for the House District 45 special election, the locations as proposed, the days as proposed, and with an amendment to the hours to include 7 to 7 Monday through Friday and 9 until 5 on the 2 Saturdays.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks and Mr. Bruning.
May I
I
have
was
a
going to
comment?
ask her if they had further comment. Yeah.
I would just like the board to give us a direction. If this is where I'm seeing this going, is if you would always like to see 7 to 7 and 9 to 5, because, you know, it's been our practice to be variable based on the type of election. But if this is the type of, you know, edit that happens basically every time, then we won't go in with the lesser numbers of hours.
Speaking for myself, I'm a fan of consistency because I think it really helps our voters. So that's me. I would say yes for me.
Anyone else?
It's just too long. I'm sorry. This is a special election. I understand, but I mean, I think the main office on the weekends is going to be empty. But I mean, you know, this is just mine, but I know it's by law. So I think we can cut it down and save the taxpayers. But I just don't think it's good. But anyhow, that's just my opinion. I'm sorry.
Pat, could I make a comment?
Apologies for your opinion. Go ahead, Jessica.
This is Jessica. Could I make a comment? I don't know if Janine remembers comments that I made when I first joined the board, but one of the questions that I consistently asked was, what would it take and how much would it be? And when we say we can save the taxpayers money, maybe we need to know what the difference would be. I mean, maybe that's a question that we need to have the answers to.
But
In moving forward, I
no, I
believe
understand. But with that, is it about money? I mean,
right. It's
that's not what
for
I'm
me.
hearing.
It's not for
Yeah.
me, but if that's
Yeah.
going to be a question, maybe, because I think I maybe asked a question, how much would it cost to have one additional advanced voting location? And I guess that would vary depending on number of employees, but I think that's of general interest.
Okay.
Maybe that's a go forward,
Yeah,
especially to the
yeah.
point you made, Ms. Evler, about if the request will be that we want to maintain consistency, or if it's this board's position that we should maintain consistency, maybe that's just part and parcel of the information that you would generally provide, if that is indeed the case. I think the monetary aspects of this came into play in part because Mr. Gartland made mention of saving the taxpayer money, and rightfully so. I mean, those are all, you know, legitimate concerns. I will note, however, that there is a properly made and seconded motion on the table at this time. And so if there is no further comment or questions about that particular motion, being to approve the advanced voting options with respect to date and location, with one modification to times during the week, going from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. or from instead of 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That being the motion. If there's no further comment at this time, we can go ahead and take up a vote. Don't want to, you know, foreclose the opportunity for anyone to be heard from the board. That being said, again, voice vote, Ms. Brooks,
Yay.
Yay.
Mr. Bruning,
Yay.
Mr. Gartland,
No,
and my vote is yay. The motion passes. I do note the hour. I'm not suggesting that we table any items on the agenda, but I do want to be cognizant of the time. Ms. Evler, your review of the draft advanced voting schedule, are you calling for approval of this during this meeting?
We can defer that to the March 14th, I believe. Let me just check something here.
Sure.
Yes, if the board would like, we can defer that to the March meeting.
Okay. One point of order for just a moment. Daniel, I know that you're on. Will there be a need for executive session just as we're kind of managing the time here? Is he still on?
Sorry, I was trying to get my camera and my mute button back off. Not if the board wants an update, I'm happy to give an update. There's nothing that I need any guidance on right now. Or there are multiple things I could update you on the SB 202 litigation, but there's nothing that I need guidance from, especially if it's time sensitive. We can hold off to the next one if you would like to.
No worries, just looking at kind of managing time. All right, we can, well, further to the conversation we were just having around consistency on voting. Ms. Evler, if you wanted to take us through the advanced voting and provide a status on redistricting efforts, it might be more pertinent from a timing perspective to provide the status on the redistricting efforts, but go right ahead as to
Sure.
either item or both.
Yeah, we can switch those. I did just get a text also from Erica. The meeting with the state has ended, and the earliest we will know if we have a system solution or a paper solution is Wednesday. The latest we will know is Friday of this week. So I will update the board by email as soon as we hear. And how that might impact if there is a way that we can do both locations with whatever solution comes up, I will let you know.
And then recognizing if need be, we can have a special called meeting as necessary following you getting the information we need from the state. But go ahead, please.
Correct. So switching to redistricting, I know that was something that some of the board members had special interest in. We are working towards redistricting. We have all of the maps and all of the data files that we need, including the 3 of the cities that have progressed through the General Assembly. And we are at the point where we're identifying all the combinations. And, you know, just to let everybody again see that visual, that as you put the layer of US Congress on, we have 4, you know, different buckets. You put the layer of Senate, state Senate, you have another 6 layered on top of that. And then the next layer is the state house, and then commission and board of education and the cities. And so wherever there is the same combination of offices, that is given a number. So it may be that 764 identifies, you know, the same combination, an area that has the same combination of districts. And then 765 is next to that because there's one difference. Maybe there's a school board line that is different in that area. Again, it doesn't intersect. It intersects precincts. It's not the same as precincts, and it's not affected by precincts. It is just governmental jurisdiction splits of districts. And so as far as our progress, we are looking at, there is a redistricting module in ENET, which is, again, the old system. We are moving towards a new registration system that will look a little different. But the old system is where we're doing redistricting, and once you go into the redistricting module, you can make no updates to the registration system for 4 days. So it's an iterative process where it works overnight, then you check it to see what has what anomalies bubble up, and you say, well, that person or that voter property did not get placed in the correct district, so that we'll fix those. Then it goes overnight again, and then it reveals different errors each time you check and get reports. So it will be a 4-day, 3-night process, and we expect to go into that on this Friday, and then we will be checking and rechecking, and are targeting next Wednesday. So we're giving it a full week, even though it's a 4-day iterative process. We want to make sure that we have caught all of the problems before we say we're done. But prior to going into that module, we will pull the HD House District 45 voter list so that we have a copy of what it is right this minute before we redistrict everybody. But now that list that we pull for House District 45 can still change until the voter registration deadline of March 7th. So if we get any updates from voters that they have moved into or out of that district, or they're new to Georgia and they live in that district, we will keep a manual list. So it is a situation that no one can remember having had to deal with before, of course. So we are blazing trails again. But that's kind of where we are. Oops, okay, I got it. I'm the host now, I guess. Our host
No
left
worries.
because she doesn't have to put anything else up. So anyway, it is complicated. It's something that redistricting is already complicated and very tedious. I mean, we are looking at maps down to the parcel level, and sometimes, lines, and some properties have outbuildings, and the outbuilding is in one district and then the house is in a different district. And so there are, very meticulous work. There is very meticulous work that comes through doing that.
Okay. Well, we fully appreciate the specificity and kind of the meticulous nature of the work that you and your team are undertaking. We appreciate it. The work, we appreciate the updates, and obviously the challenges as presented, given some of the staffing changes and vacancies you have. Obviously, if there are things that the board can do to support and facilitate, just let us know. Anything further, Ms. Evler, in your report?
No.
Okay. We're going to move on into board comment. I see you there. I'm sorry. We can use board comment. I know you specifically had Steve, a comment or questions as it relates to redistricting. I think we could take that up as part of board comment.
Sure.
But we're opening it up right this moment, so it's on you. Go ahead.
The question is in regards to the redistricting QA tool, Janine, that I saw on the Secretary of State's site. It looks like
Yes.
a whole nother process
Yes.
of checking or testing. Is that in your schedule already, or does that happen after we're done?
That will happen after we're done. We'll use that tool to try and identify, that's a GIS tool to try and identify, again, parcels that may be outside the district, or where it's just a confusing line, like the outbuilding home kind of thing. And it'll identify those kind of anomalies, and then we'll look at each individually and say, is this really an error, or is this supposed to be like this, and we'll leave it. But our main thing is we have to get people, voters into their districts for qualifying the week of March 7th. And so we'll use as much of that QA tool as we can between the time we come out of redistricting module and qualifying. We'll try and use that tool. It is a brand new tool. We have not used it before, but I would anticipate that we would continue using it after qualifying is being conducted. Presuming that, the ones or two errors or the few number of errors that it will identify are not the candidates that are qualifying. But of course, if a candidate qualifies and we show them not in the district they say they are, then there will be investigation of that as well. But it is a process, the QA tool will be a process we'll use for probably several weeks after that, until we get very comfortable that our efforts were correct.
When is the drop dead date? When do we actually send the cards or order the cards that go to the voters?
Well, the drop dead date is, again, the qualifying will happen the 7th through the 11th, and then the ballot will be built the next week. And the ballot has to have the precincts and district combos. And so if we've, for instance, missed an entire district combo or not identified something that would be a new combo, then we're missing that, and that's a big error. But as far as what you're talking about with voters getting their precinct cards, the deadline for that is 30 days prior to the election. So that's looking like, mid-April, end of March is when you would order the cards. Of course, we would like to order them as soon as we can, so we give the mail service enough time to get all that stuff out.
Right.
Alrighty, are there any further board comments at this time?
I have a quick question that is probably unrelated to anything that anyone is thinking of, but I did receive an inquiry about the Mableton cityhood from someone who is a member of the South Cobb Alliance. And the question essentially is, what role does the Board of Elections play in determining when the cityhood referendums would be on the ballot?
My understanding is that we don't play a role. My understanding is that comes from the legislature. I don't know whether anyone else on here has a different opinion, but that's not a decision that this board has any authority over.
Right. My question, I believe that my answer was, I believed as you, that is part of the legislation that is passed, that is written into the bill.
Yeah, that's correct. Okay. Sounds like we're on the same page.
I think there is a circumstance that might occur if there's a difficulty in getting the redistricting done in time, then that there's a safety valve in the bills to
Yeah, but that still is outside of our jurisdiction.
That's true.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. That's all.
I think
Mr. Garland, I'm sorry, did you have something? Maybe not. Are there any further comments from the board? So again, Janine, recognizing what you're managing through, given the vacancies on your staff, I just want to reiterate, if there are things that myself and other board members can do to support you and or help facilitate things, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and hopeful that the vacancies that are not published will get published in very short order so we can begin the process of getting those particular roles filled. So if there is nothing further, I'll just note that our next meeting is March the 14th at 3 p.m., recognizing, as was noted earlier during the meeting, if there is a need, we can convene a special board meeting if need be to take up anything as it relates to the April 5th election. And if there is nothing further, we can adjourn the meeting at 5 p.m.
Hey, one question. Will we be back to in-person meeting next time?
I believe at this point, we are following the guidance and the direction, essentially what the Board of Commissioners is doing. So to the extent that the Board of Commissioners is not meeting in person, we've made the decision that we won't meet in person.
I think that the emergency order that instigated this to begin with, it may be expiring. So
Right.
our assumption is that you would prefer to meet in person if it allows. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, you'll recall we were planning to meet in person in January,
Yes.
but then took guidance from the Board of Commissioners or from Madam Chair of the Board of Commissioners. And so if that emergency order is extended, then we would,
Right.
follow suit and continue to meet virtually. Otherwise, I believe and I can say that, yeah, the preference would be to meet in person.
Yeah, we'll work towards that if the chairwoman of the commissioners does not extend her order.
Okay.
There being nothing further, the meeting is adjourned at 5:01 p.m. Thank you everyone for your diligence and your stamina in going through today's meeting.
Thanks all. See you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Hey, Tori, there's one, oh, or Janine, there's one question in the chat. I don't know if somebody wants to answer that. I just noticed it. I think we may have answered it.
Can you read it?
Oh, did you want me to read it? It says, how do you handle precincts that are in two different, let me close this one, that are in two different congressional districts? I mean, that's the district combos.
Yeah, it doesn't, district combos are irrelative to precincts. They don't, it doesn't matter. A precinct can have multiple district combos and a
Right.
district combo can have multiple precincts.
Okay. I guess Mr. Gray can reach out if he has further questions about that.
Okay.
Great. Good to see everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.